Hi, everyone. Welcome back and happy Wednesday. Today, Irene and I want to talk about continuing 2023 updates in the employment law. And I want to talk about some of the new changes with the protections against discrimination and retaliation. So in 2023, now the term alien is now amended, and we're now referring to the term instead of alien is non-citizen, and illegal alien is now referred as undocumented citizen. And in early 2022, there was an amendment to the New York State human rights law, and I really want to defer back to Irene so she could tell us more about the updates in this section.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. This has been pretty monumental because we've received a lot of questions now. It now seems that employers are in a position of some confusion because technically this should allow for some of the undocumented aliens to be able to actually be employed. And there's actually a space now for that to occur. And so the questions have been, of course, how do we treat that? And what do we do in these types of situations? And especially the companies that I have found that are in healthcare that constantly need employees to come in, especially caregivers at home. The questions have been, are they even able to sit for the certification, for example, that's necessary? So even if, for example, they're cleared and they contact us and we take a look and we can clear them that, yes, you're able to hire this individual, are they able to even take the requisite courses necessary? Are they able to officially receive payroll? And that's something that we would then defer over to Jane just to confirm. How do we do that? So we usually actually get just a few parties involved, and we check the state regulation as well in case there's a need. For example, if you're in an industry that requires OSHA certification, sometimes you'll find that the documentation or lack thereof may be the barrier to somebody receiving that certification that's necessary for the person to start working. Or in a situation with a home health aide, which is something that's been coming up quite often. It's an industry that very often does not have enough employees to come and cover for the care needed, especially following COVID. We've seen a big need there. But the question has been, do you have enough of the documentation to actually be able to sit for the certification required? And then, of course, I imagine this is going to open up the law that if you're technically allowed to be hired, but there are still barriers in place, technically, can you then be still actually be hired, and is it still in compliance with the law? So I still imagine that there's going to be a larger expansion for unregulated businesses that don't need a person to be certified. And I just want to confirm, when I say unregulated, I meant in terms of just in any certification or license needed. The answer is a little bit easier for us. But in those places where we have some healthcare employees, or we have employees that are in hospitality and so on, that's where we have to take a look a little bit deeper there, and it's not really a direct answer that we can give. So, but it's an interesting change, and we do anticipate more changes as they come, just simply because you have to remove all the barriers. And a lot of the times, the way that the lawmakers put these changes into effect is they don't do it all at once. And they don't lift all the barriers at once because they don't see everything that surrounds it until it's brought to their attention. So we do anticipate a lot of changes, and we'll definitely be updating you as they come in.
Yes, definitely. This is the year with a lot of changes. And then another one that I saw was accommodations for nursing employees. So I know that New York State is expanding protections for employees, right? And so there's going to be a reasonable unpaid break time to permit employees to go and express breast milk, designing a designated room and other locations to make sure that it's sort of secluded. Um, and then also a written policy which is developed by the New York State Department of Labor, and this is where Irene, you're going to need Irene's help. But I thought it was interesting because when I worked in corporate and we used to have designated areas, and it did have like it was a close proximity to the work area, it was well lit, shielded, free from intrusions, and that had all the minimum requirements that is now. But I know that some of my friends who worked in the private sector, they were told, of course, yes, of course you could do that, but oh, here you could use my office and you just kick me out whenever. So I didn't have all the requirements, and it was still a little awkward because you had to interrupt your um manager or somebody and say, oh, please, can I use your office? I need to go now. So now it kind of takes it away that none of that is allowed. And I think this is very wise because it was definitely, times inappropriate. Sometimes it's just too difficult to manage. So what do you have, Irene? What are the suggestions you have for some of our listeners who are the ones who need to maybe set up these stations and working areas for the nursing employees?
Absolutely. And this is a question that especially comes up in office space as well as small businesses. So usually every room is designated already for a specific purpose. And so the question has been, well, how do you, let's say you designate a multi-purpose room, such as, let's say, a closed kitchen if you have a closed door in it. Well, what do you do? Do you have to install a lock? So and so on. And so uh, of course, it has to be a room where um, the person would feel safe, where there cannot be any intrusions. It should be a room that nobody else would be using, so there are no interruptions, if possible. If the room, and then it does have to be a separate room. And the most important thing that I want to mention, because this comes up very, very often, and my clients very often ask me, can't it be the restroom? Because technically, if we have multiple restrooms, if we have 4 restrooms in the office, technically one of them could just be designated, but the restrooms, it's not permitted for it to be a restroom. It's not considered sanitary enough. It's not considered appropriate enough either. Also, it's not necessarily free from intrusion, because other people may need to use that space, even if it's a private restroom and it's not shared. So definitely should be a designated room that's specifically usable for the purpose provided, and that it doesn't cause any discomfort to the employee, it doesn't cause any undue hardship to the employee, and that the facilities really are closed, clean, and that they are reasonable as well. Any lactation accommodation requests or maybe accompanied together with a form. But most important, what I want to bring up as well is that New York City, the new code does require that a lactation policy be put into writing and be available to all, and that there be a lactation accommodation policy, and that it's spelled out in the lactation accommodation policy exactly which office or which room is the designated room to be used as a lactation room, and exactly specifies the procedures for how to use it. It's mandatory that that be put in, and it must be in writing to defeat the potential claim that no such room was available or such room was not up to par of what should have been up to based on the law, so that somebody cannot say that, oh, I wasn't given a room. Once you put it into writing, it's official, and it is the law that it must be an official policy. So really very, very important that the lactation policy designates the room, and it's all in writing as well.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Of course.
And I think we're going to talk about some of the further updates next time, just so it's not overwhelming at once. So, but if you do have any questions with this, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.